The minutes for the April 9th, 2019 commission meeting have been distributed. Has everybody had a chance to read through those?
Yes.
Would anybody like to make a motion to approve those?
So move.
A second.
All right, the minutes have been approved. Oh, I didn't do roll call, I'm sorry. Ms. Rothstein, would you please call roll?
Commissioner Henderson?
Here.
Commissioner Lee?
Here.
Commissioner Velasco?
Here.
And Commissioner Carey and Commissioner Batterson are absent.
All right, so item 4 on our agenda, since we have no public comment slips, we'll move to 4A, Leisure Needs Assessment, our findings presentation from Greenplay. Mr. Smitherman?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm happy to have Greenplay back in the house. They've been through their assessments and would like to share with you today the results of the surveys, the inventories. So we have Carrie Knold here, and she'll be going through a presentation with you, and then have time for questions at the end.
Good evening or afternoon. Thank you for having us. Good to see all of you again. So as Dennis said, I'm Carrie Knold, and I'm with Greenplay, which is a Parks, Recreation, and Open Space consulting firm. We're based in Colorado, but have offices all across the country. And I'm the project manager on this project, and I'm working alongside Dennis, which has been a pleasure so far. And with us tonight, so far. And with us also tonight we have Art Thatcher, who is a principal with Greenplay, and we have Alex Samarin, who is with K2UA, which is an architecture firm out of San Diego. And then also on our team, but not present tonight, is RRC Associates, and they have provided the survey work, which we'll discuss tonight, some of the findings. So with that, just to be clear, where we are in the process is that we're still, considering what the recommendations and actions are going to look like. And so no decisions as of today have been made. We just want the public to be very clear about that. And really tonight, where we are in this process is about the findings, which then lends into the recommendations and an action plan. I'll discuss those steps towards the end of the presentation. As you probably recall, we were here in February for a couple of days, and during our time here, we held 5 focus groups with a total of 68 participants. We spoke to a wide range of community members that represent different aspects of your community, and we had 4 stakeholder interviews with folks that Dennis set us up with, as well as conducted some site and facility tours. Both Alex did that as part of his work on inventory and level of service, as well as Art and I got the pleasure of having a tour with Dennis to see some of your really impressive facilities. I have to say that I keep referring to your youth center to a bunch of my clients because it's so impressive. Like, you guys have a really good product there, good service. And then of course we had meetings with department staff. It's good to see some faces here tonight. And so out of that, we provided a fuller document to Dennis for his records, but some of the key themes that came out of that engagement, so this is specific to those focus groups, were issues of safety and security, communication, accessibility, connectivity was a big one. We heard about engaging with the Hispanic community, and then certainly around the athletic needs in the community, whether those were multi-purpose fields or pickleball or lighting. These all kind of rose to the top, things that we heard consistently. So then we went away from that and we did a bunch of different analyses. And so this is a real high-level presentation of what some of those findings are. We gave Dennis a more in-depth version of the findings earlier today, and we certainly have some documents that will be provided as part of our work if you are at all curious to see the real beef of it, but this is a high-level presentation. So as we looked at your community, we definitely had decided that we wanted to do some analysis, particularly around the survey, but also with level of service, around the voting districts. We thought that's going to be really important, that's new for the community, and so we wanted to layer that into our analyses. So just so you understand that we did decide to do that by sub-area. So as part of our demographics work, just some key things here. Wanted to point out that your median household income is just under $53,000, and that people, according to ESRI, which I don't exactly know what ESRI stands for, so I apologize, but Alex?
Environmental Systems Research Institute.
Yeah, Environmental Systems Research Institute, which is crazy because they have an office in Denver, and I've been to one of their classes. Pretty phenomenal work that they do. Anybody in the field of GIS knows about. Anyway, you have here, a good percentage of your population is identified as Hispanic, and just a little under that you have Caucasian. Median age is just under 31, which is interesting. Okay, so a lot of information here. I'm not going to go through everything because we would be here all night long. So then as we looked at, what did we hear from the public and what do we know about your community? What trends should we be considering as we think about developing recommendations in an action plan? And again, I'm just going to touch on a few of these. We have a very detailed trends report that will accompany the master plan, but here are some high-level things because they're what are really resonating in your community. So we looked at active transportation. And this, we know, in Parks and Recreation is a place where our departments can have impact. Not saying that active transportation is singularly the role of Parks and Recreation to be the primary, department responsible, because certainly we need to work with Public Works. It might mean working with the State Highway Department, other partner agencies, but certainly that there are health benefits, which is why it's of interest to our department and our industry, that active transportation has significant impacts, especially when we look at bicycling to work, that can reduce absenteeism and illnesses. So the reason why I pointed that out specifically is because when you look at, so this commute profile information is specific to Santa Maria, and you have a bulk of people who are spending, 34 or fewer minutes getting to work, which is interesting. If it was up higher, I'd say, that might be a long shot for us to have an impact. But actually, you have a lot of people who are not traveling that far by car to get to work. So how do we have an opportunity to persuade or incentivize people to bike to work? Maybe. Okay. So then we looked at other trends, and when we heard the notion around connectivity and mobility and access and these things, what comes to mind is, well, what are people spending their time doing if they're outdoor recreating? Well, interestingly, particularly for the Hispanic population, you see that the most popular outdoor activity here is running, jogging, and trail running. Okay? And then, of course, we have road biking, mountain biking, BMX, and hiking, and certainly fishing, and this notion around backpacking is less. But when we think about connectivity, again, if we have, a population that's over 50% Hispanic, to motivate and incentivize people to be outdoors, do we want to provide opportunities for hiking and being outside on trails? And because we have this notion around safety, how do we do that safely? Not on street, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't feel that safe if I'm running on a street where traffic is flying by. It can be dangerous. So what does this mean for us? So we're just looking at this as a trend. And I was actually really excited, Dennis has heard me say this, but this week is Bike to Work Week. I don't know if you're aware, but yeah, okay. So, and Friday is Bike to Work Day, but there are programs all across the country where cities are working to, again, provide their communities with incentives for biking to work. And some communities decide that it's not just biking, but if somebody, scooters to work, or has an e-bike, or whatever it is, it's just an alternative mode of transportation besides your car. So these are some ideas that we're looking at. And then I mentioned this, or put in this picture on the top right. This is a community, a neighborhood in San Francisco where there were a lot of issues related to children being able to get to places safely. And so there's a program, and I'll provide some staff document information for Dennis to understand this program, although he mentioned that they're working on something similar, if not this exact program. But where they're actually creating, and you see with the paint, what they're actually saying, this is a safe route, and they're identifying it, and they're kind of owning it as a community. And this is a neighborhood, so it's localized, it's a neighborhood in San Francisco. So just some ideas like this that we'll include as we start drafting the plan. Okay, so in addition to demographics and trends, then we did this needs assessment survey, which is a big part of your project. I mean, it is a needs assessment, an action plan. So we worked with staff to come up with the survey, and some of the questions are based on previous survey work, but we also included some new questions, again, based on what we heard from the public and what we heard from staff. And we had a number of different methods for getting that survey out. And so our first step was to have this mailed survey. So we sent that out to 3,830 households in Santa Maria within the boundary. And from that, we had 304 final respondents. Okay, so it's a 7.9% response rate, which is good. Our RC was nodding their head saying, yep, that's sufficient for us to have a good sample size. And after that, then 2 weeks later, we opened that up for folks to respond online, even if they didn't get it by mail. So we opened it up pretty much to the general public. And for that, we had 189 respondents. And then after that, I think maybe that was open, Dennis, a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then you went out and did this really great, staff went out and did really good intercept survey work where we got 153 respondents. Dennis, I don't know if you want to mention at all where you guys did that, or, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, before we had talked about the locations that we thought would be best suited to getting a high number of participants and results. So other than the flea market, which we were not able to because of the day of the week and staff timing, we did the Friday night events, we did the open street event. We had staff go out on a Saturday and go to the soccer fields and different locations throughout the city. So they were all the locations we had talked about except the flea market specifically.
Yeah, but this 153 respondents is that's significant and really impressive. I was pleased to see that work done. A lot of communities can't pull that off. So I commend staff for the work that they did. Okay, so again, we have a full report from our RC that will be provided to Dennis and is available. But so I'm just touching on some key things here. There's a lot more that goes behind what you'll see tonight, but just real quickly, I wanted to point out that you had, so this, you can see on here that you have your overall, so this is kind of the combined, and then the results are broken up by district, and then as well as measuring the intercept responses, okay? But what here I want you to see is that overall, similar to your demographics, you do have a good representation of folks identifying as Hispanic responding to the survey. Okay. Similarly, I think it's important to note that when we talk about household annual income, that you have a good representation there as well. Okay. So in all the work that we do, this particular matrix it really cross-tabs a lot of data, and so I think it's good to share with you guys, because what you can see in here is that based on a number of different things that you have in this matrix, it's broken out by high importance and low needs met, high importance, high needs, low importance, high needs, low importance, low needs. And so what's important to see here is that, sorry, this is where I want to stand up. Yeah, thank you, thanks. What I want you to see here is what I have circled here is that trails and pathways, as well as swimming pools, and maybe even just like outside of there is that special events in terms of high importance and low needs met. So we can identify these as opportunities and focus areas, really. Okay. Whereas over here, you can see that people who responded to the survey feel like your parks actually are meeting their needs really well, but they're really important to them. So this is a good thing. You're doing really well here in terms of playgrounds and recreation programs as well. Over here, what we typically find are these are places where people are really more passionate about something specific. This is your sports organizations, whether it's tennis or paddle sports, soccer. They typically fall over here because it may not be overall important to the general public, but it's important to those people. And so we look at these as opportunities, and then over here, low importance, high needs met, kind of the same thing, like they're niche areas, but their needs are being met. Okay? So this is how we start thinking about where do we need to put in focus towards the future. So this particular slide, I wanted to include in here because we knew that there was a lot of concern, even from the folks that participated in our engagement sessions in February, around, and by staff in particular though, to ask, what language do you actually prefer to receive information from the city in? And you can see in here that overall, 94% of the respondents said, give it to me in English. Okay? And over here, even in the Intercept, where we had, I think it was around 75% of the people in the Intercept surveys identified themselves as Hispanic, 86% of those folks are saying, give it to me in English. Okay? Now what we see here, and I shared this idea with Dennis earlier today, is that if you're going to have some specific programs that are going to be offered in this area, it may be worth targeting some marketing efforts in Spanish in District 1 and 2 that may pay off. Okay. So this data becomes useful in terms of how do we communicate and how do we market ourselves in the programs and get our brand out there. So I'm going to run through these real quickly. These are the top 10 findings that we have from the survey. And so in terms of familiarity, most people are pretty familiar with what the department offers. Okay? It's interesting, District 4 had the highest level of familiarity, and we can make some assumptions around that, of maybe there are more programs offered around there, and there's more facilities, and so it makes sense that that's why they have more familiarity. In terms of usage, of course, we're not surprised to see that Waller Park actually was the #1 response to that question, knowing that it is a county park, but it sits right here in the community, and it's no surprise that that's up there. But we have these others up there as well as being highly visited. In terms of satisfaction, they're generally satisfied. Okay? With the facilities and programs and services, but it's when you look at the data and the details, you'll see that there's actually slightly higher satisfaction with your programs and services. It's only a smidge higher, but it is higher for what that's worth. Again, when we talk about importance and needs met, we see parks, playgrounds, programs, they're all serving the community really well. Okay? But then what are the opportunities? Those things that we had in that circle, trails, pathways, swimming pools, might need to do some work and some thinking about how do we provide those for the community going forward. All right, things that would increase usage. So right here, it's interesting here, it said providing more lighting, but we had this discussion earlier that right now the hours are dusk to dawn. So that the parks are closed from dusk until dawn. So lighting doesn't make sense because your parks are closed, right? But people have a perception, and so we have to think about what is the perception of safety because, we were having this discussion, just because the park is closed doesn't mean that people aren't necessarily going in there. It can mean that. But it's something to be mindful of. The other thing that would increase usage is more amenities and more restrooms. We hear that, that's pretty common, actually, to hear restrooms. A lot of people out there with little kids and they gotta go potty. All right, recreation facilities that can be improved. Over the next 5 to 10 years, people responded saying trails, pathways, and community and neighborhood parks, as well as athletic fields. Okay. Now, interesting, it doesn't say new necessarily, it just says improved. Okay. Because what we also heard was that maintaining existing facilities is really important to people. They're not necessarily after new facilities, unless they're athletic fields. All right. So methods for receiving information. So again, social media and email, they were the top two. We had local media as well, ranked up pretty high. And so what we see is that the top ranked preferred method was media, like traditional media, and that's going to be more effective with your older folks. Whereas social media is much more effective with the younger folks. I mean, nobody's surprised by that, right? No. But what it means for staff is then you probably can't rely on one method. You're going to have a mixed method approach to marketing and to communicating, okay? So, and again, 94% of your respondents there prefer communications in English, which is consistent with what we find in other communities as well. So in terms of what does the community hold as kind of dear and important going forward, so they want to see facilities that are clean and well maintained, and that where they feel safe and secure, very important. Things that didn't rise to the top, but we asked about because we thought that we heard from the community that there was a need, was this idea around providing transportation. It really did not rise at all. So we were surprised to see that, and you'll see it does say except in districts 1 and 4, which is similar to what I said before, that it may be that you do targeted efforts. If you have a program that you're really focusing on a specific target market, then maybe providing transportation is part of the program. And then around fee increases, that really, we usually see people are going to say, yes, fees are going to impact me, my ability. But it should be no surprise that people who earn less than $50,000 said that it significantly will. And one thing that I didn't show the demographics, but we found interesting here was that 50% of people in Santa Maria own their residence and 50% rent, which is a bit of an anomaly. Typically it's 80-20 with 80 owning. Okay? So when we think about fee increases, we need to be mindful that that could potentially impact 50% of your population. It's just out there, okay? All right, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex, and he's going to go over inventory and level of service analysis for you.
Hi, my name's Alex. I'll be walking through the level of service analysis for City of Santa Maria Parks. There are 3 different types of analysis I'll be going through. The first is the population level of service, the second is travel shed level of service, and the third is amenities level of service. Population level of service gets at the number of parks per acre, park acres per person, and we express that as actually park acres per 1,000 people. And we look at this for a base year of 2020 and a forecast year of 2035. We also look at the population in travel sheds, and I'd like to define a travel shed for you real quick. We take existing travel infrastructure, so roads and sidewalks, and we look at how far you can travel along that. On a 10-minute walk, at 2.5 miles an hour, a 5-minute bike at 12.5 miles an hour, a 3-minute drive at posted speed limits. And an example of a walk shed, what we're calling a park walk shed for this study, is shown on the right in teal. So anywhere in teal on that map, you can access a park within a 10-minute walk. This is helpful because we can identify gaps between parks for each travel mode, and also with further analysis look at park-rich and park-poor areas based on the number of parks accessible as well as the park acreage. The last type of analysis we'll look at is the amenities level of service. We'll be using the data we collected on February 8th of, that should be 2019, this year. And we compare that to a 2018 standard adjusted for Santa Maria's population density. These are the existing parks in Santa Maria. You can see we've also included Waller Park, which is just across the city boundary and managed by the County of Santa Barbara. I show the park acreage, which is the total park acreage provided by the city as well.
Sorry, is Armstrong Park 20?
Yeah, I think it's live.
Okay.
Let's see, acreage question. Four.
Okay.
And Oakley
Okay.
also.
And, oh, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Several of
There's
those.
some inaccuracies on the acreage.
Well, other than if it's lower than a Lowe's, he'll explain that in
Oh.
a second. If it's higher than a Lowe's, we'll get that fixed.
Okay.
Could be adjusted, yeah. Could be the sorting of the list, yeah, okay. All right. These are the population trends that we see in the city. We'll be increasing from a population of 2020, in a population of almost 112,000 in 2020 to 133,000 in 2035. It's a 19% increase. You can see the population density increases as well, not only in compact infill areas, but on the outskirts of the city as well. If you're having trouble reading the legend there, I believe that the maximum population density is greater than 15 people per acre, and the least is a max of 5 people per acre. So again, this is the walk shed that you saw before, the park walk shed. And looking at these in series, this is a walk shed and a bike shed and a drive shed. As you can see with each mode, the area covered increases. And the next table will show the population that's covered for each of those areas for both years. And it's a lot of numbers. I'll summarize it at the bottom. If you look at the percent of current population for 2020, it's for walk sheds, you cover 42%. Of current population in 2020, but that decreases to 40% in 2035. And if you notice, the other two modes actually increase slightly for the bike sheds and even more so for the drive sheds. So this kind of gets at the idea again that the population is going to be shifting to the not really infill in the center of current population centers, but pushing out towards the edges. And that's shown in the level of service here. So we also use those travel sheds to look at the number of parks within a certain travel time and distance and the acreage of parks. We'll go through a series of maps here first for the number of parks within a 10-minute walk with a maximum of 3, a 5-minute bike with a max of 8, and with a 3-minute drive you can access as many as 13 parks. Sorry, that's actually a 3-minute drive. To make that more meaningful, we could express it as acreage, which should be adjusted based on what we just found with the previous table. But the idea is that you can access, within a 10-minute walk, you can access a maximum of 43 acres, right around Adams Park, you could see, and also in the southern part of town there. A 5-minute bike ride, you'll see that highest category again expand, and even more so with the drive shed. So, flipping the idea of a travel shed on its head, we look at the areas outside of the travel shed, and more importantly, the residential areas, those areas where people live that are outside of each of these travel sheds. So that's what we call an underserved area. And these are important because you could summarize per council district, in this case, the number of people that are underserved in each council district. So for a 10-minute walk, approximately, the number's pretty consistent actually across all council districts. They range between 4% and 6%. And this is fairly high compared to the other modes. As we switch to the bike, you could see, and we're looking at the map on the right, by the way. On the left is the walk sheds as we have been using them previously. On the right is the underserved area. So here's the walk underserved area, and the bike underserved area decreases, and again, even more so for the drive underserved area. Comparing the percentages against the total city population, population in the walk areas is the largest percent of underserved level of service. So, the population level of service, first we start with an adjusted park acreage where we take out any developed or undevelopable land. So developed would be a community center, and undevelopable would be something like pond, like as in Jim May Park. So we come up with a net park acreage or a utilizable park acreage, which we have 271 acres in the city of Santa Maria. And we compare this on an acreage per 1,000 people basis to the 2020 population and 2035 population. And we come up with, I'll use the pointer for this. Currently not counting Waller Park, any percentage of Waller Park, we have 2.11 acres per 1,000. And then 2035 with no changes, that drops to 1.77 acres per 1,000. Counting 25% of Waller Park, which can and should be adjusted up, that changes to 2.42 acres per 1,000 people currently, and drops to 2.03 acres in 2035. In real acreage, that's summarized at the bottom of the table. In the rosiest picture, there are, I believe that's 200 acres short in 2035. So finally, the last measure of a level of service is with amenities. With the available range of current facilities, all needs are fairly well met. The largest deficiencies are with the ages 6 to 12 playgrounds, swimming pools, and tennis courts. One good thing is that none of the current nothing that has a surplus in 2020 has a surplus in 2035, and those are some of the more important things. The highest deficit here is with playgrounds ages 6 to 10. So briefly, here's an overview of the findings. The population level of service decreases to 1.77 in 2035. We see the percent of population within a 10-minute walk decreasing, while the population within a 5-minute bike and 3-minute drive increasing between 2020 and 35. So our recommendation there is that park development should occur in watershed gaps where acreage level of service is the least. It has the highest need for park development. And I have to commend your city on the number of barbecues available. It matches the highest amenity level of service, which is picnic shelters. So that's good to know that you have that. Also, your tot lots, playgrounds ages 0 to 5 are well covered. And both of these have a surplus well into 2035. The largest deficit you have is for playgrounds ages 6 to 10. And some of the other deficits in terms of level of service are for more specialty uses, swimming pools, tennis courts, and community garden. So that concludes the level of service.
So, thank you. We just confirmed that the numbers are right. It's a sorting issue, so we'll fix that. And Alex will fix that, and they'll reinsert it into the presentation and then provide it to Dennis. So if you wanted to have a copy of this presentation, we can get that to you. That's all. So now we take all that information and we look at, so what does that mean for Santa Maria? Like where do we find ourselves today? And so I'm going to go through again some key themes and issues that we've identified through all this analysis and talking with staff and talking with the community and having the survey and looking at your programs and services as well as your financial position. And I'm not going to go over all of these verbatim because you can read, but I'll bring up some of these that are rising to the top, which is that when we have organizational changes, maybe there's an opportunity to look at where our needs are, okay? Because we know that we have some opportunity currently, but even in the future, when we do have that, and it can be difficult for government, but if we can have some flexibility in being able to meet our community's needs, that's how we get there. So we need to be flexible and take advantage of opportunities when they arise. So certainly the perception, and I changed this in my other presentation on this one, sorry Dennis, but the perception of safety and security of facilities is a priority. So we were talking and asking the question of how real is the issue of safety. We don't think it's, based on data that you have, it's not a real safety concern. We're not talking about actual violence in the parks, but there's a perception. And so what do we need to do to address that? So we'll start working on those preliminary recommendations. Making sure that information flows to staff, and how do we educate and train our staff appropriately? These are issues. Special events. This can be a great way to draw our community together. Upkeep of existing facilities and amenities should be a focus. That actually in the survey results is pretty strongly heard. Existing facilities, we have opportunities to repurpose those. We'll think about that. Again, safe connections to key destinations. That was a big one that we heard. We have environmental education programs, but they're pretty limited right now, right, to Los Loras Park. Youth-focused programs and facilities to support the well-being and positive development of our youth. That's important. We want to make sure that we're thinking about barriers. This includes fees as well as physical barriers that can, and the lack of knowledge or lack of information can limit some folks from being able to access programs and services. So how can we, we'll think about how can we do a better job of that. We want to make sure that we're meeting this community's needs for a mix of interests. Because you have a lot of young folks and you have a lot of older folks, and then you have folks in between. So how do we provide programs and services that helps meet those needs? Opportunity to update the fee structure. That was last done in 2015. I believe there's work underway, yes, by the city. Yeah, so that's great. Glad to hear that. And then leveraging those opportunities to partner with other folks when we have shared common interest and goals. What are those opportunities? So we'll look at those. And then, as I said, tomorrow morning we'll be working with Dennis and some staff and anybody, I think, from your crew who can be there, and talking about some of these key issues and start looking at preliminary recommendations and really getting some actions formed for a draft, which we believe will be back in August-ish with a draft. And then we would follow the next month, if all goes well, with the final plan, so you guys can get off and running in September. So that's where our next steps are, and we'll nail down dates and all that good stuff tomorrow. Okay? So with that, we would be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, Commissioner Velasco.
Yes, Velasco.
Commissioner Velasco. Commissioner Lee.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, not at this time.
Do you have questions? Do you want me to go first then? Can we go back to the slide? You had the ethnicity of the districts, kind of, I don't know if, you know what you're.
Back as part of the survey
Yeah.
data. Pardon me as I flip through this, but happy to do that.
I think it was, yeah. So District 1, just going back to the whole, what language they want materials in. And so District 1 and 2 had the highest response for Spanish material. I just wanted to see what the makeups were.
Let me see.
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah, so 67 and 58, which corresponds with the highest. And then, okay, I just wanted to
Yeah,
check.
no, that's fine. And I would only say that, keep in mind that this is just of the respondents.
Of 300
Yes, that's right.
people, right?
308.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever that percentage is, 5 to 8% of 300 respondents. That's the 86% of those open.
Yes, so here, and I know this gets up because we have so many methods for obtaining survey data, but yes, as you can see, so the breakdown by district is for the invitation, so that was the mailed survey.
Right.
Whether they returned it by mail or went online with the passcode and did it that way, plus the open link respondents. But that's it, not the intercept, okay?
The other question I had, sorry, I'm looking.
I have a question.
Go
while you're
ahead.
looking.
Thanks.
Just to be sure, the surveys we did get translated by staff into Spanish, okay? And how well does that correlate with other city information that we have regarding the language distribution in the districts? How well does it correlate with the other data that's out there?
I don't know that there is any other data specifically collected that way.
By district.
By
But
district.
overall, in the city, I know our school district has information like
Yeah,
that.
that's probably where we would need to go to
Okay.
do a comparative study. The city, as far as I know, I don't think they've ever run a specific demographic study. That might be something that they do as they move forward with, the downtown plan and some of these other things, but I don't recall anything specific out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I struggled with those numbers. I don't know if anybody, I see you shaking, I'm just struggling with those numbers, and I think it might have to do with our final responses, the 304 or the 153, because it's not what you hear. So, and I know you maybe you want to say, well, because those are the louder people, but I'm just struggling with those comparisons. I just want to.
So, I'd like to have Art speak to some work that he's done in another community and other areas. He works a lot in California, and so I think hearing from him on this issue would be helpful.
And I can tell you that what we have, because it's become a question with most boards and commissions over the last 2 years about translated surveys and those things. Typically, when we do a translated survey and we mail out both versions, we get less than a 1% return in the translated version that they come back in English. And so we've started asking this question on our surveys. And typically the response is English. Somewhere in the 80 to 85% of all the respondents say we'd prefer to have it in English. And what we found is, I did a project in San Gabriel, and the majority of their population is Asian, and followed by Hispanic, and then the white population. So we did an intercept at their Lunar New Year event, and we provided the intercept survey in English, in Vietnamese, in Cantonese, and in Mandarin, and then also in Spanish. And we got almost 800 back, and of those 800, 600 of them were in English. And so, we know that the preferred language, and what we found was, observationally, is that either the child or the grandchild would come and get the survey and go back, and the family would fill out the survey. So maybe the first generation is not an English speaker, but they're English speakers in the household, and so they're relying on the English speakers to do that survey and to do that work. And so, we had tried, we did, in San Gabriel, we did a survey in 4 languages, and over 80% of them came back in English.
Right. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah. Is there any, not to this, just another.
Yeah, that's fine.
Since our median age is 30.5, do we have any information on the age of those who responded?
Yes, I do.
I'm sure, there's
Yes.
so many things to add, but do we have that breakdown?
Yep, it is in the survey results.
Okay.
It was in a slide that I had in another presentation that I gave to Dennis, but not in this one. And you actually have a very good distribution of varying ages. Yeah, it's representative. RRC made a statement in the report that says this is representative of the demographics, so. Yes.
Okay. And then my last just comment, the safety perception and then the whole thing with lighting. I think it's a real safety issue, as we can see with our homeless and transient population as it grows. If you speak to our rangers, I think they'd be able to tell you the safety issues surrounding parks. So I'd really like that to kind of be explored in the analysis as we move forward with addressing that, because it is something that we discussed in our last meeting. How are we going to help that demographic really find a space that lives in conjunction with, our community that uses the parks for recreation, as opposed to, hanging out in those areas. So that's definitely something that I hope is explored. And then also just your key themes slide. I think those are in line with some of the things we do here, especially around our youth development. And you mentioned that our youth center is something I'd like to see some suggestions on how we can improve that with our youth. And what that perception is of the people that are using it, to really improve that service.
Okay.
So.
Did you write that down? We'll look at your minutes, thank you. That's great.
It's recorded.
Perfect. Yeah, I appreciate that. The issue around the perception of safety, the real sense of safety. I would like to talk to the rangers, if that's at all possible, and get their input on that. And I have a good reference document around some program type things that you can do, because it's a combination of park design, programming, activation, getting community involvement, and actually NRPA, which is the National Recreation and Parks Association, has done some good work around that, and so I'll be including some of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I just had 2 things. I wanted to just double check and clarify the timeline going forward. You said that you'll be returning in August, so we won't see you in June or July, but we'll see you again in August, and then we have a final plan in September?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then also, there's so much information in this, and I think I could read through it again and again and again and again.
Yes.
I'm wondering, is it possible to put it up on the website so that anybody that's curious can look at it and reference it? It's a lot of space. It would be interesting. I think that there's a lot of folks, from like the Bicycle Coalition to...
Yeah, well, this will all be part of the master plan. And so when we get all that together, we'll be able to post the data as well as the suggestions and comments by the group, Green Play, and move forward from there. Right now, this is preliminary, so we could do something all together when it's complete in August.
Okay, very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure seeing you again.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. All right, moving forward, item 4B, we have the Mayor's Youth Task Force items. We have Megan Diaz here with us. Mr. Posada, do you have something to?
I think Dennis is going to do the intro.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Commissioners. Today we have Megan Diaz with us. She's a facility specialist too, as part of the team of the Mayor's Task Force on Youth Safety. She works directly with Eddie Galarza, as well as our youth center staff at the Abel Maldonado Community Youth Center. Her role has definitely grown since she started, and she's jumped right in. We do hope to expand that team to have one more member, and that's a full-time coordinator position, hopefully later this summer or early fall. Megan's main projects and programming is really working on assisting Eddie with outreach efforts. While Eddie works one-on-one with youth and really tries to provide resources, Megan's real role is to provide activities to teens in our community that are outside of the youth center. So Megan's worked on a variety of projects. She's only been here, I want to say 3 months, not even 3 months, and has really hit the ground running. And with caffeine, she's been very motivated to get some projects started, up and running and going. And so I'll let her explain what those are to you. So everyone, this is Megan.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hello, everybody.
It's okay, we can hear you.
So there's a few different projects that I've been working on. I want to start with our National Safe Places Network. We've been partnering with the National Safe Places to try to bring them into Santa Maria because we feel like becoming a safe place agency, it'll allow us to help the youth to access resources that they don't feel like they have access to, so that if they're ever in a challenging place, they need any help, they can just go to one of our facilities and whoever's there will be able to assist them into getting the resources that they need. The National Safe Place Network is a nationwide program, so they have the policies and procedures in place that we can now implement into our city to just allow the youth to feel like they're actually important, like we care about them. So that's one of our projects. Another one is our teen pop-up events that we're doing. We had our first one last week at Bob Orack Park. We will be doing another one this week at New Love Park. And then every Wednesday during the summer, it'll be events for the teens from 12 to 17, from 4 to 7 p.m., where they can go. We'll have bubble soccer, we'll have drone racing, we have Nerf battles. We have a lot of great things for them to experience, and we just want to get the youth into a safe environment so they feel like there's actually something to do, especially since school won't be going on. They'll have a place where they can all come together and just have fun. Another one of the projects is our adventure passes, which we've teamed with the Transit Center, and we'll be getting, how many exactly? Over 1,000 bus passes for the youth. They'll be able to come to the youth center, sign in, and get 3 bus passes, so it'll cover them for June, July, and August. And we'll just pretty much be taking their information so that they can get to any of our programs. We're partnering with all the agencies that have teen programming in the city so that they can get to those programs and not have the transportation issues. When they come in to get the bus pass, I want to have a packet with all the programs that we have, as well as a bus schedule that takes them to those places. And we're working with Transit now to get that done. And then we have 2 teen leadership programs. One is kind of modeled after the Chamber of Commerce leadership program. It'll consist of about 20 participants. They'll spend 1 day a month throughout the school year going to different government agencies where they'll get the chance to shadow, learn the dynamics of the agency through small group classes, discussions, and shadowing. It's pretty much just to teach them the leadership skills and to also learn more about local government and the issues that may be faced. And then we have one that I just got, that I should say we just got approved for. It's the Chick-fil-A Leader Academy, Chick-fil-A Leadership Academy. And what that is it's a national leadership program as well. It's funded through Chick-fil-A Corporation, our local Chick-fil-A, as well as Coca-Cola. So they'll be putting up the $4,000 that the program takes, and it's 7 leadership labs from September through April that they do once a month as well. And for Chick-fil-A, they want a mix of different participants in it, which was great, because that was kind of on board what we wanted. So I'm working now with the owner, with Joey Hickox, about actually getting everything started, but we'll be starting that for sure in October. And I think that is all of them.
We're really excited about the CFA, Chick-fil-A Leaders Academy. We're one of the very few that will be running this outside of a school district. So that will be housed at the Abel Maldonado Community Youth Center. So it was really exciting news to get that. It's also something the mayor was really interested in as well. So Megan's done a great job moving forward with that. Any questions about any of the programs?
Commissioner Velasco.
Megan, what are your hours of work?
My hours are 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. for now, but for the summer it'll shift to later hours. And anytime pretty much I can see teens is pretty much where I want to be. Yes.
And your office is for?
Abel Maldonado.
Nice. Commissioner Lee?
Megan, thank you for being here. I have a question. I grew up in San Francisco, Chinatown, one of 7 immigrants, kids, and I'm just wondering, is there any way that you're targeting the kid that's falling out of reach, and how are you doing so?
Commissioner Lee, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in on that one. Yeah, we work with Eddie Galarza, who's our outreach coordinator, whose whole role is to really seek out those youth, get them into positive programs either through the youth center or through other outreach efforts. We also work with Fighting Back Santa Maria Valley, the school district, and many other partners to identify those kids that might be on the cusp of making a negative choice in life, and really try to get them involved in programming where there's caring adults who can maybe get them shifted in the right direction. So Megan handles the programming, and Eddie's really getting the youth to those programs.
Okay. Excuse my kind of, not ignorance, but just lack of awareness in this community. I've just began living here. I used to just sleep here, so I was commuting to Santa Barbara every day. Is there a big brother, big sister type program? And if not, are we doing anything to create such an environment?
You know, that would be a great partner, and I don't think we've actually reached out to them in-house, but I believe they may have been part of the initial Mayor's Task Force group.
So they're, actually we have, because they work under FSA, I want to say, and so I have already reached out to them. There's also one of the agencies that I've reached out to for pretty much all of my programs, so we have worked with them, yes.
Great job, Megan.
So just to follow up on what Megan is saying there, so the Family Service Agency and Youth and Family Center merged 2 years ago or so, and so they have had in South County a big brother, big sister kind of a program. That program is what they're trying to get going here. You know, the problem, like I think everybody is running into, is finding those big brothers, big sister kind of programs, individual volunteers. So I'm not sure where they are. I'm not sure if they're actually having placements yet, but I know that is one of the things that they want to try and do.
So I used to work for Big Brothers Big Sisters when I got out of college 10 years ago. And I used to do the Lompoc program, and they run it out of the Boys and Girls Club. And then here they have a pretty big community-based program, and they work with a lot of kids like in foster care, or CASA, things like that. And then in Santa Barbara, but FSA, Family Service Agency, is the agency that houses the national program for the county.
One suggestion I might have is for the city of Santa Maria to target city leaders, teachers, etc. And this is something that maybe the mayor could get involved with, targeting people. I know when I was working with the National Intramural Recreational Sports Association, what we would do is target leaders, literally approach them face to face and suggest, would you be a mentor? And then we would match them up with the student leaders. And if the mayor is willing to do something like that, I'm sure there are a lot of people in the community who would be excellent mentors, and with a reaching hand like the mayor or yourself or any of us, we can kind of create such a program for the city.
thank you.
Just-
Commissioner Velasco.
I wanted to look it up to make sure. The National Safe Places Network, if you need any help with that, we actually, through my full-time job, we do some work around that, because it is based out of Kentucky, and we work with the grantee that has the funding to run that, and so I've actually met them. So we could always talk offline, if that's okay, because we have some resources and work already started on that through the work we do, and I could assist you with that if you need that.
Yes.
I wanted to ask a quick question about how the youth know about the specific opportunities. You said that maybe creating a brochure or something like that, but even specifically the pop-up events, that sounds like something that's going to be a real asset in our community. How do kiddos learn about that?
Megan has worked really well with Sasha, our graphic designer, and has created a lot of beautiful pieces, individual flyers. We're working on some banners to be put up at those parks the week prior to the actual pop-up event, things along that line. We're also working citywide. We're waiting for a new city administrative memo to come out regarding social media. Right now, the department's allowed to use Facebook and Twitter, which is not high teen use social media outlets. So the new policy will include Instagram, Snapchat, and give the department director the flexibility to allow staff to seek out additional platforms that may be beneficial. Right now, we're relying on media partners. Usually radio is the hottest media for teens, not so much print and television, and through direct flyer distribution. Eddie also helps advertise and distribute when he meets with the kids, but he's also working with the low-income apartments, getting all these flyers and talking with the management at those facilities to really distribute that to. It's almost a door-to-door operation, but they're handling a lot of the work for us. Yay. So that's to start. Then as soon as we can get approval for social media, we're just going to move right in, and it's a very inexpensive way to promote, very, very inexpensive to get that moving. And that's our goal for now, and then working, with the mayor's councils she has at the two high schools. They'll promote these kind of activities and events as well, and it's really the council's job at each school to then promote to their peers and so on.
Okay.
On top of that, we also have the agencies, Fighting Back Santa Maria, FSA. They do a council meeting every month, so we make sure that we get all of our graphics and all of our programs out to them so that they can distribute it to any kids or any parents that they work with.
Awesome.
Did you have something else, Commissioner Velasco? No.
I have one more question.
Yes, Commissioner Lee.
I'm just curious, one of the concepts that I really enjoy is when programs engage and encourage, empower their stakeholders with 3 words: ownership, legacy, stewardship. In other words, number 1, ownership, encouraging people to become stakeholders. As an example, over at the park by our house over there, I think it's called Rotary Centennial Park. I see a former retired school teacher who goes out there every morning and she's just picking up trash. Legacy is encouraging, empowering the stakeholders. Once you have ownership, you admit, I want to be an owner and a stakeholder. How can you evaluate the programs and then leave your legacy? How can you get back? And every individual has somehow, some way to contribute. And then lastly, stewardship is, when I worked at the university, when people graduated, I remind them, remember, you have the most passion for your program for rowing or lacrosse, whatever it is. Now that you've graduated, please continue to be a steward of the program and provide stewardship. And many of them have started endowment funds, etc. I'm just curious, do we have any award programs to encourage teens or to engage and therefore recognize them for their contributions currently?
Great question. The mayor's task force on youth safety really has kicked off this last year as far as programming and activities. And so as we wrap up the school year, the mayor's teen councils will be recognized at the youth center with a wrap-up event and be recognized with the certificate of appreciation for participating. We also encourage them, if they're not graduating, to think about being part of that council again next year, participating in those programs, so they do have the buy-in and want to be there, and hopefully we can get them to assist Megan down the road, volunteering and active in the programs. And we know we hope they choose a school close by, but should they go away, we hope they return and continue to participate in teen activities and be an advocate for not only teens that are disadvantaged, but for all teens to have a great neighborhood and a great city to live in. So that's our goal.
Wonderful.
Great. Well, welcome, Megan. We are very excited to have you on board. Your enthusiasm, energy, and knowledge has been anticipated, and we're excited to see how we can move forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, just a last question. Megan, what's your role? Are you a college graduate?
Yes.
Okay, so what's your career ambition? I'm just curious.
My bachelor's is actually in kinesiology, but I interned through Parks and fell in love with it. And so really a lot of my work has been with undeveloped, underserved neighborhoods, and that's really what my goal is, to always work with them and to just better those neighborhoods and those communities, whichever ones I can impact.
Great. Great answer.
So you can be a mayor someday, or?
I don't know about that, but baby steps.
Yeah, one step at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
All right, moving on to item 4C on our agenda, Prop 68 projects update. We don't have Cindy with us.
We
Dennis.
don't, and I'm sorry about that. Just a quick update, we did apply for Prop 68 funding through one of the pots of money, which they didn't find to be a perfect fit for our project. So we applied for the soccer field project as well as Enos Ranch project. And that grant, while we did our best to try to meet all the criteria, was more about conservation of natural resources. And so parkland can sometimes be a challenge to write what they're looking for into the grant. So unfortunately, but we're not done. We do have another opportunity coming up through one of the many other funding sources through Prop 68. And we're also looking at the list that you provided as commissioners for priorities to seeing what makes the best sense for that pot of money that the grant is opening up under those different programs as well as departments that the state has under Prop 68. So we'll be bringing back to you recommendations for upcoming grant funding opportunities after we meet with Alex to go over the criteria and share with him what, based on your list that you provided, what would be the best fit.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, new business. We have the community partnership grant application approval. I don't have any information on that. Is that you, Alex?
Hello, Commissioners. So you have an application for the Community Partnership Grant from the Kiwanis for Kids Foundation to put towards the inclusive playground at Prescott Park, and it is to pick up pieces that are not included in the original project. There's some sensory pieces that were part of the original package from the vendor, but weren't included because they were cost prohibitive. Last year, we had already given out our grant to Foursquare, yes, thank you. And so we have the opportunity this year to go ahead and grant the $10,000 in the fund. That's what the request is for. There's a packet in there with the information, which I think, with the exception of Commissioner Lee, I think everybody's seen the project. The plan right now, from what I understand, is this summer to actually do the groundbreaking and get something moving there. Kiwanis has been successful in committing that $45,000 of their money for the project, they've also been able to get some local vendors to provide things like irrigation supplies to reroute the irrigation around the playground, those kinds of things. So they're probably somewhere in the $25,000 of additional dollars towards the project.
Questions? Is it a time-sensitive request?
Yes. The budget year is going to close, so if we don't use the dollars, it will be reallocated back into the fund.
We start over?
We'll start again,
They'll give
yes.
us another?
And we've received no other applications?
No.
Okay. Then if there are no discussions or questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I so move to approve the community partner grant application.
Would you like to second that, Commissioner Lee?
I really haven't seen the project, so I feel like I should.
As chair, can I second?
Yes.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, we need a quorum, so.
We don't have.
Okay, so we'll move it to the
Given
next.
this,
Well,
but even if I vote, it's not a quorum, right?
We can't move it to the next meeting because budget cycle ends in July, or we'd still be in,
Well, the budget has to be, our window for putting in purchase orders and things closes this month.
can we do an email vote? Is that allowed?
Yes, we can. You'll have to ask that we do that, and then we can put it out.
So-
Would you,
For the record, I'll approve the motion.
yes, okay, so then all those in favor?
Aye.
Do we need a roll call?
No.
Then it's approved.
Ms. Sheila will make sure she records it as all ayes and 2 noes. And then what we'll do is, just so, that'll help us, we can move the paperwork forward, and if there's any issues, we can bring it back. You know, It's
Okay.
not a big deal, but if we can go ahead and get this moving, then we can write a PO tomorrow, Ms. Sheila.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Under item 6 for old business, we don't have anything listed, so we'll move on to item 7, informational reports. The budget update is in our packet. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Smitherman?
We're moving right along with new hires for summer. We're bringing on about 15 new lifeguards, 8 new water safety instructors, and a bunch of staff for the Safe and Strong program. So even with our current budget, we're moving right along, and we seem to be right on track to be at budget by the end of the year.
Oh, great. Any questions? Then the noteworthy activities, April report is included in the packet. Comments?
No.
Always full and exciting to read all the wonderful things that are happening in our community. Thanks for including that information. Directors of report, item 7B1, city
B1.
tree ordinance update.
B1. So I'm going to digress from that just a little bit and give you
Sure.
some other information. So as part of this project, the needs assessment, one of the things that came up as their priorities was the lighting issue. And so I think I mentioned a meeting or so ago that the city's in the middle of an energy program with PG&E and the Southland Corporation to come up with some options for lighting. And so I think, did we hand those out, Sheila, in packets, or are they on the dais? So this green little chart thing that you have there with the green bars on it, this is kind of what we got yesterday at our meeting with the consultants. And the first column is, the ECM description is the location that we intend to look at lighting. And then the second column is the cost for that lighting. If we just concentrate on those 2 columns, you know, for now, this would open up the opportunities for us to use a lot of the field space that we have now for an additional, I think the estimate came from facilities, was an additional 600 hours a year of field time. Obviously, there'll be some, you know, impacts to the park side, to the maintenance side, but if we were able to do that, I mean, that's a significant amount of hours. They wouldn't be necessarily ideal hours because they would be, you know, in the evenings, and you'd have to go out and, you know, play under the lights. During standard time, that would be a good thing, you know, during the daylight savings time, there's really not a lot of need for lights. But the purpose of this project was to find ways where the city could make improvements to our lighting systems that exist now. And so those are the retrofit parks, those are the ones in the green bars, where the lighting system, they're now older, and so there's new technology out there. Not only that would be more energy efficient, but would also be more efficient as far as focusing the light on the fields of play. We have a binder full of these grids that show the lighting, and our lighting in our facilities, even those facilities that we think are pretty good, like a Hagerman, are pretty low. So these studies also bring up the lighting levels on the field so that play is safer, is really the only way to describe it. Then those fields in white are those fields that don't have lights, that could have lights, if we were just able to come up with the money in column number 2 for it. So you're looking at some significant projects, like Adam Basin Lighting with, $1.6 million. The way I tried to bring it up to the consultants yesterday and want to frame it for you all today is that in order for us to build the 19-acre soccer sports field complex, we're probably talking somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 to $10 million. In order for us to light all our existing fields and upgrade our existing fields, you're probably talking somewhere in the $5 or $6 million price range. So, again, some discussion has to be had as to what is the benefit to lighting our fields, spending the money to light our fields, using the revenue from lighting those fields to help defer the cost of that lighting, and then also to use the reduction in electrical costs to help fund lighting at particular areas. And so that's where they kind of move you across the page there to utility savings, over the course of a typical year. And they also add in like operations and maintenance. The light systems that they have today are LED based as opposed to what we use now, metal halide, which is a bulb essentially. And the LEDs, I believe they said yesterday, is a 25-year life expectancy on those lights and a guarantee from the manufacturer for 25 years. So the time that we spend hiring somebody to go up and change light bulbs, again, the energy cost, the wasted light that we have that kind of spreads out all over the place. So there's some critical things to look at, and I guess the commission has taken the position that we want to add more fields, however that happens. So last year, the year before, the commission took a position that we would bring in temporary lighting or allow temporary lighting to come into fields. Many of them are on here that didn't have lighting. And I think the public's request was that we put lights on fields. So this kind of gives us an opportunity to put lights on fields. It gives us a plan on how those might be funded. There are several options for funding, and one of the tasks that the consultant company has is to find us somebody willing to invest dollars in a lighting program. And that's just one component of the study. The study is actually citywide, so all the city departments, all the city facilities will be looked at. So our part of it is this column here in cost for lights. We're talking about heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems at the community centers. We're talking about internal lighting up there. We're talking about the pool lighting. So there's a lot of things out there that are going to be included also. But what I would like for the commissioners to do is to take this list, kind of study it. Most of you know these parks anyway, and you get an idea of what it would mean to open those up for additional use. At Atkinson, we actually are, with this same program, we're actually looking at coming back with a synthetic turf field there to make it more playable, longer periods of time, because that facility is secured, so it's a little bit easier to manage. But there are some ideas there, and that cost is not included in this. This is strictly for lighting.
Sorry, Commissioner. Are we looking at synthetic turf for any other sites?
Not at this time, just Atkinson right now.
Commissioner Lee?
Just a few observations. I know you mentioned that most of our fields are incapable of changing to synthetic fields because of their water basins and with the high.
Yes.
So that's one serious consideration. Even if you put lighting, we're going to have serious maintenance issues, and it's a vicious cycle.
Yes.
Personally, I see the need to save our money and invest in a brand-new, nice, glorified project that's going to bring people from all over and generate additional income for the entire city and service our community. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll study this and discuss it again in June?
We'll put it on, it'll probably be the July agenda. We'll have a little bit more idea where the council wants to go with this then.
Okay.
If there's a request from the consultant to go a little further, then maybe we'll bring it back at the June meeting. But at this point, I was looking at July.
Okay.
One more comment.
Sure, Commissioner Lee?
Is there currently a study for some type of a solar bank or facility to generate electricity? So when we do go to lighting, that'll be sufficient.
One of the components is, and I believe the council already awarded a RFQ program, but that'll be based out at the landfill. I'm not sure how that's going to be distributed, how the savings of it's going to be distributed around the city. So I'm not 100% sure. But there is no other plan to do any solar to help offset any of these costs. All of it would be based on more energy efficient lighting systems.
Perhaps with any projected project, we can ask the lighting companies to recommend if there are any programs. I know some facilities, as an example, the parking lot, they're converting into solar panels with the overheads.
Yes,
So
the high
that-
schools have taken advantage of a program like that. I'm sure that the city has it in their overall plan. I just don't know how and if it'll affect our particular needs. I'm not sure how that's planned for.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So now,
Tree ordinance, just kind of bringing you up to speed on that. So we've been talking about getting the tree ordinance updated for a long time. The tree ordinance is probably close to 20 years old, has some, over the years, we've identified some issues with it. Public Works has identified some issues with it in their ability to meet their customer service demands. Utilities has had some issues with it when it comes to water service and sewer service issues with tree roots and things. So what we have done with the city manager and the director of public works and I have kind of sat down and come up with some ideas on how to move forward with updating the ordinance. There was some talk about making some significant rewrites, but it looks like we're going to be able to take what is in the ordinance and do a little tweaking to it and try to approach it that way as opposed to coming up with a whole new ordinance. So I've asked Scott and Roy to take on components of a new rewrite and kind of bring those out. I would like to ask for at least one commissioner to serve with staff on that as the public oversight people. Public Works has no public oversight board, so they tend to push the agenda that they have, and we try to push the agenda that our role is to look at preservation as much as possible, have public oversight, which is you, and to have have the commission represented either by one or two members, would, I think, give some credence to the need for public input and review. And if you checked your commissioner handbook way back when, the council has delegated to you appeals related to tree issues in the city.
Right.
So you have a responsibility by ordinance, I guess, to play a role. So I'd like you to, again, think about that. I know that not everybody is here, but there may be something to talk about at our next meeting, too.
Could I just ask the timeframe that we're looking at? I'm always wanting to know when and how long.
I would say it's an ASAP thing. We're going to do a couple, I might as well tell you this part. So we're going to do a couple of projects that fall within the current municipal code. One of them will be in Country Club, the old Country Club area, Ocatello, St. Andrews, down in that section, where we have some very large trees causing a lot of issues with sidewalk, curb and gutter, and constantly get complaints from those residents. So the plan would be to use that one as kind of a test site where we would go in, do a removal, come back with replacement trees that maybe are more appropriate for the location. And then my goal is to try to take whatever canopy that is that those trees are giving us and figure out a way that if we can't put them back in the neighborhood, where can we put those trees in a public space somewhere, or maybe a vacant location somewhere else around the city, so that there'll be a less of a net impact to the canopy that the trees provide. And that's something, again, that Scott and Roy will be working on to come up with how will that work. So that project will kind of be the poster child for seeing how it goes. The other thing we talked about was taking, we just completed our inventory of trees citywide. That was last year. West Coast Arborist came in and did that. I believe Roy came in and gave you a pretty good review on that. The idea is that during that study, we asked West Coast to identify damage to public infrastructure along with the tree. And so what we're going to try and do is see if we can spit a report out of that identifies locations that have trees that have caused significant damage to public infrastructure. What is the species of the tree? Do we see a pattern, which we know there's a pattern on trees, species? Is there a way, should we be looking at a way to, instead of using our current definitions, which is to remove a tree, they are dead, diseased, or dying. Those are the three criteria we have for removing a tree. Should there be additional criteria, i.e. damage to public infrastructure, age of the tree, wrong tree, wrong place, those kinds of things. So those are the kinds of discussions that we want to have with this group.
Right. Any questions? Commissioner Lee?
The recent drought, I just observed a lot of the pine tree having a lot of issues with disease and dying. I know you probably had removed a significant amount of those, I would imagine. I'm sure there's some type of recommendation for the type of trees. Number one, have those been replaced?
So yes, and I think, Scott, you're welcome to come and jump in anywhere you want on trees. The trees are majorly stressed from the drought. There's no doubt about that. And we have had significant removals and significant, tree diseases that can be attributed to the drought.
Mm-hmm.
Have we done replacements? We've done more removals, I think, because of potential hazards than we have doing replacements. But we are in the middle of a grant right now with 500 trees that we're supposed to be planting, so that'll help towards the replacements. But again, you're talking, what are they, 24-inch box we're planting now? Or, so you're talking 10 years before they get to any substantial size. So, and we have reduced the variety of trees so that they're more appropriate on our tree selection list. Scott's role is to make sure in new development that the tree is the right tree in the right place, and that past practices of basically letting the developer or the landscape architect or the planning department say, this is what we want, and even though the parkway might only be 2 feet wide, we want a sycamore in there, you know. We can't. We have to battle those battles more strenuously, because it doesn't do any good for the public infrastructure or the resident or the neighborhood. So, yeah, we'll be working on it.
Any other comments? I think we're on the right path because the new park, the Harvest Glen, I am so excited about the trees. They look like I can't wait for them to come to their maturity, and they're beautiful, and it's such a nice project to see coming.
And again, Scott rode that one.
Yes, and I look at it several times a day. It's gorgeous, and thank you.
We try to advocate, to create better space for trees
Right.
too, not just pick the right tree, but put them in a place that is in a situation. So you do it out front.
Yeah.
And it's becoming successful. As far as the replacement trees, what we're doing is we're putting a lot of new trees in, but if you may go, you took a tree out of Miller, and you say, well, we have a funding problem there, we'll put a tree over here. So the urban forest we are developing, but we have to look at the budgets too.
Yeah.
Which is complicated.
So there'll be more on that coming. Like I said, when the minutes go out to the meeting, we'll see if anyone's interested specifically in serving on that committee, or any 2 members.
Great.
Being new on the commission, I'm not sure if the protocol for something like this, but I'm here for your service as needed.
Good, volunteer, I think, served that, didn't you?
I heard it.
Tree committee member.
It's in the minutes. All right, moving on to item 8, Commissioner Reports of Official Business. Does anybody have official business they'd like to report?
I don't have any official business that I can remember I attended, but I did have a community member ask me about Harvest Glen, and I was glad to share the concept plan that we've discussed and that there is progress. So they were just asking about timeline for that, and so I am bringing that here.
Right?
Scott, it's Scott's project.
As of a week ago, the design portion, the final working drawing design portion, was at 50%. I know it's further than that, I was giving you percentages. So I expect us to have something by the end of the month, not a final project, but an 85% completion, so we can go over the design, get things going. We're already internally, staff-wise, starting the wheels rolling for the development. We want to get the ground running with this plan. So this will be, park will be developed starting in the summer. Because it's sort of an in-house thing, it won't be maybe as quick as like the basin next to it has been.
Right.
But the basin is in, this is that too. We also have some work going on the corner of the Legacy Trail project, which is a great sort of partnership, public and private. So again, maybe a little slow, but it's also not costing us a lot.
Thank you, I will relay that.
Commissioner Lee? April 10th, I attended the Enos Ranch Park Community Information Gathering session at VETS, and there was a lot of council and commissioners there, and some good questions and good discussion, even though we didn't get that grant. It was good to attend. And then May 6th, I attended the at Allen Hancock College, the Santa Maria Arts Council Grant Showcase honoring Alex. It was a great event. I've never been before. It was really nice to go. I'm gonna make sure that I go to that every year. Bring my kids next time. The young artists that were represented were amazing, and so exciting that we've got such a base of talent in our community, and I want to follow up about some of them too, because they're really exciting stuff. But they had obviously great things to say about Alex and the work that he's done to advocate for the arts in our community, and Alex being wonderful Alex. Thanked, all the people that helped support him, and then also made great plugs for the department and the things that we're looking for and need, and hopefully those requests were heard. So that was really great to go to, and I'm glad that you were honored, Alex. So
Congratulations.
that's it for me. Any community interest items? No? There were a couple of articles from NRPA which were really, really good. So if we haven't read them, I would just encourage people to go back to them and read. The first one that I got last month was on recycling, and it had some really great points, and I would like to see the commission or the department think about a green team and kind of brainstorm ways that we can be advocates and at the forefront of these issues that are that we're facing, and a lot of communities are facing, with possibly the end of recycling, curbside recycling anyways, in communities, and how we can be advocates and make positive change before we have to. And then the other one that was just out this week, I think, was on synthetic sports fields, which was interesting. And I've been kind of asking folks in the community, how do they feel about synthetic fields? I'm not an athlete, so it's not in my, and I've heard very strong on both sides, and so it's definitely something to consider.
Speaking on that, when I was at UCSB, we had the problem where every time it rained for the grass fields, we would have to stay off for it as long as a week or 2 weeks, depending on the severity of the damage. So we started with turfing with synthetic turf, one field. And if you were to go to UCSB today, this is about 25 years ago that we put on the first synthetic turf. Now all of the fields are lighted and turfed with synthetic turf. Mm-hmm. And they've come a long way since the AstroTurf.
Right.
So my recommendation is, if you want participation and usage, then yes,
Sure.
Let's invest more money into upfront and allow that.
Great.
I'd also like to dovetail off your comment about recycling and go back to the 3 words that I mentioned earlier: ownership, legacy, stewardship. Again, when I walk to Centennial Park and I see people, just everyday citizens, who will go out there on a daily basis and either pick up trash or recycle or just clean up dog poop, etc. Somehow, if we can partner with the City of Santa Maria Parks and Recreation Parks and maybe market such a program and encourage everyday citizens to do so, I think that would be a nice program for the city.
Commissioner Lee, we do have an Adopt a Park program, and I'll share that information with you tomorrow when I see you.
Great.
Anything else? Just a little shout out to David Rodriguez for always being awesome. He helped me a lot. You're paid. The kids are registered for lots of classes this summer, and even though he is not the guy to go to for that kind of thing, he is willing to help out in so much, and just like so many other people in the department, very helpful. So
I echo that. He's at everything.
yeah. And so positive. So with that, we will adjourn to our next regular business meeting, June 11th at 4 o'clock.